Welcome into the Action Network podcast. We are presented by BetMGM, the king of sports books. It's time for NFL best bets for NFL Week 16. A little bit of a scrambled bunch this week with the holiday season. Brendan Glasheen in the host chair. We have three people you're very familiar with the program. We have Anthony DeBundo, a.k.a. the Cheesehead from last week, a.k.a. the Weatherman, a.k.a. the rah-rah, blah-blah Mike Tomlin guy. Grant Neefer, who's here to dish out some props. We've had Neefer on the program, and the Giffinator, the doctor, Mr. Nick Giffen, joining the show this week. We've got these guys joining us. You can find these guys individually in the free, award-winning Action Network app. We are alive and well with holiday travel, getting you ready for the best bets. You can find the video version of the podcast as well, if you haven't done so already, on the Action Network YouTube page. Once you hit subscribe, give this video a like. We greatly appreciate it. And we also like the 5-star ratings that you provide wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. Don't forget, again, follow these guys individually. And you can also find us in the Action Network Discord channel. Good dialogue, good back and forth, great way to interact with some of our Action folks and the betting community. Something you should check out if you haven't done so already. Let's dive in now, fellas. All right, we had a good week last week. We had 4 and 5. We had a couple of plus monies hit because of the touchdown bets, so that's good. We're 500 plus for the year with the look ahead 78 and 69. We will have a look ahead this week from DeBundo. He's filling in for Brandon as it pertains to the look ahead spot for week 17. But DeBundo, why don't you kick us off for your best bet, number 1 for week 16 in the National Football League?
America's game of the week. Sunday afternoon, Christmas Eve should be a good one, 4:30. The Dallas Cowboys plus 1.5 against the Miami Dolphins. And I know that I was against the Dolphins last week and lost in hilarious fashion. It was never competitive. The Jets didn't even score. But I still think there are problems with this Miami team and regression coming for this Miami on both sides of the ball. First of all, their defense this season has faced the weakest schedule of opposing offenses in the entire NFL. And when you look at when the Dolphins have gone up in class against these other top offenses, Philly, who really hasn't even been that good since, but has scored 31 points on them pretty comfortably. The Bills were into the 40s against them. Like, when they've faced these top offenses, they have struggled to stop them, and they've benefited from a lot of backups and mediocre quarterbacks they've faced over the course of the season. Now they're dealing with all these offensive line injuries, and I know that we just watched the Bills run all over Dallas, and I think there is real signal in the fact that the Dallas run defense is a problem. But all of these offensive line injuries for Miami leave them kind of starting half backups, and so I think they're going to have a trouble dominating the game like the Bills' offensive line, which by most metrics from PFF to pass block and run block win rates is a top 3 or 4 line in Buffalo. So I think Dallas, they'll give a better effort here, and it's a better spot for them. And then, this Miami defense, I'm intrigued by, whether Vic Fangio can kind of copycat the McDermott blueprint from last week and keep 2 safeties high and make Dak beat them with their legs and force everything underneath and take away the big plays. But better weather here for Dallas, not as tough of a road environment. And I just think Dallas is the better team. So I'm catching 1.5 on the road in a better spot. And so I'm going to take the Cowboys plus 1.5 to win this one.
Can't confirm the weather in Florida is quite nice right now. Not quite in Miami, but yes, beautiful weather. So it's not quite the indoor setting that Dallas is comfortable in, but it's better than what they dealt with in Buffalo in that soggy Buffalo Bills stadium. Let's go to Grant Neefer on the same game, a team we just talked about, I should say, in the Buffalo Bills. You're targeting one of their pass catchers.
Yeah, so I'm rolling with Dalton Kincaid over 28.5 receiving yards. You can get this anywhere from 28.5 to 31.5. I honestly like it at all 3 of them. This is kind of just a volume play. I know Dawson Knox coming back in the lineup is probably going to hinder him a little bit, but Kincaid is still heavily involved in this offense. I know last week he only had 2 targets, 0 yards. It's why this is kind of a buy low spot here, but that game was just strange. They decided to run the ball pretty much every single time. Josh Allen only had 15 passing attempts. Prior to that week, target totals of 8, 6, 7, 6, 11, 7, 8 in those weeks. He's been heavily involved every single week. He's going to continue to be heavily involved. The matchup is great here going up against the Chargers. Chargers allowing the 29th most passing, or the 3rd most passing yards, rather, in the league this season, giving up the 6th most to opposing tight ends. Kincaid is going to get the volume in the spot. I know that there is a 12.5, 13.5 point spread out here. I know it's potential of a blowout, but we've seen the Bills decent amount, regardless of the game script, for most of the last few years. So Kincaid, I'm betting on the volume here. I think he can get there in the first, second quarter, and this line is probably about 5 to 7 yards too low.
Any deficiencies you think in the Chargers? I know the Chargers defense altogether isn't very good. New coach, so they'll have someone new running the show there. As far as the defense is concerned, I know they still have got more there running the offense. But is there anything specific about the Chargers defensively to tight ends that opens the door too?
I mean, they're giving up pretty much the same across the board, regardless of position. I think it's slightly worse versus the tight end. New coach could change things. I mean, I don't know how a coach could do any worse than what's already been done for the Chargers over the last decade. But still, like, it doesn't matter. They're not a great defense, and Kincaid's going to get the volume. Tight end, wide receiver, doesn't really matter. They'll move him all around. They'll scheme him. They'll put him out wide. They use him as in pretty much all aspects. So Kincaid's going to get the volume regardless of the matchup, but this happens to just be a very good matchup.
This game kind of reminds me, too, of when the Bills made the change at offensive coordinator. They ran the ball a lot, but Kincaid was also peppered with targets in that game as well. So just kind of ball control, get the ball out quick, and move the chains, move some clock as well. Okay, that is the nightcap of the Saturday 2-game slate. The earlier game, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. Dr. Nick Giffen has an angle there. What do you got?
Yeah, this one, we are going to go with the over on the total in this game, sitting at 37. I like anything 37, 36.5 would be amazing if it dropped down to there, but 37 is fine. So let's take the over there. This game is a luck over, so it has a luck total of plus 5.01. For those of you unfamiliar with luck totals, anything above plus 5 after week 11 has a strong signal to the over. 35, 18, and 1 over the last 6 years. So the over in a handful of years where the under has been hitting at a pretty high rate. That's a pretty strong signal. 65.7% to the over. 5-1 this year to the over. The only loss, unfortunately, was actually in week 12. This exact matchup, Cincinnati-Pittsburgh, was a luck over, and they went under. But I think that'll change this time. Look, we've got Mason Rudolph, who's going to be quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if we look at his adjusted net yards per attempt, and hat tip to Stuckey and Raybon, who pointed this out, his is 5.1. Kenny Pickett's career AYA, adjusted net yards per attempt, I should say, is 5.0. Mm-hmm. And Mitch Trubisky in his time with the Steelers is 4.9. So he's not a downgrade from these guys on average. So I think this is a spot where hopefully books in the public are maybe down on him, because 88% of the money, 85% of the money is coming in on the under right now. Also, on the flip side, Jake Browning has not been as bad as maybe people thought he was to begin with. He's actually shown he's halfway decent, acceptable backup quarterback. So I think this is a spot where the over absolutely can hit. Both these, especially Cincinnati defense, I should say, has struggled. And while the Pittsburgh offense has struggled, I don't think Mason Rudolph is a downgrade. We get great weather here for this time of year. It's going to be almost perfect in this game for weather. So that's not a concern. If anything, that'll help the over. So I think this is just a spot where we get back the over when everybody is on the under. And when most of the money has been on the under this year, as far as the luck overs, they've hit every single time.
Oh, I don't know, DeBundo. I'm sensing a rah-rah Mike Tomlin spot this week based on these angles. It's not a Pittsburgh play. It's not Pittsburgh +2, but there is faith in the Pittsburgh side. Mason Rudolph at quarterback, and that leads to Nick's next pick.
If I hear rah-rah one more time,
I'm so done with it.
I'm
so done with it.
You don't like the rah-rah thing?
I tweeted it last night.
Last week was rah-rah, right? They lost 2 in a row. They were in Indy, desperate. Indy's apparently fraudulent, and they got smoked. There's no rah-rah there. But now it's rah-rah. Brandon Anderson thinks it's rah-rah, so he bet them, but we'll see.
All right, well, okay.
I agree with the over.
How about this? If they don't win this week, we put the rah-rah to bed.
Because then next week will be a rah-rah because Tomlin has to keep the winning season alive streak.
I guess he does have a couple of games to work with that still.
Exactly. Okay. So people are just going to keep saying it until that's the beauty of it. The rah-rah never dies.
The blah blah. I like the blah blah part. That's good. I love that. I bring it up time to time on the episode here on the podcast. So okay, Nick. But Pittsburgh, you want points, so you won't mind if Pittsburgh's the one scoring the points.
That's right. This is a luck over. So give me a touchdown bet in this game. And this is my favorite touchdown bet of the week. We're going to go with Pat Freiermuth plus 470 for an anytime touchdown. Look, his longest odds for an anytime touchdown over the past 2 years has been plus 500. And that was in week 11 when he faced the Cleveland Browns, who are one of the best defenses of all time in especially in the past decade or so. So, that makes sense. But now he's going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals suck versus the tight end. They are absolutely terrible. They're 31st in defensive DVOA versus the tight end position. But not only that, they allow the 4th most targets per game to the position. So when you add it all up, terrible efficiency and terrible volume, they allow the most yards per game to the tight end position. We talked about it. I'm not downgrading the Steelers offense much, if any, going to Mason Rudolph, but I feel like maybe the books are a little bit, and that's why Freiermuth's anytime touchdown odds are so long. We should go back to last year. The longest he had was plus 330, right? For a full year last year. That came in 3 games, but this year plus 470, which is approaching the longest he's had in the past 2 years in a great plus matchup in a luck over with a quarterback who I think can, manage the game just as well as the previous 2 iterations of quarterbacks in this on this team, on the Steelers team. So maybe not rah Steelers, but I do like some points in this one. So let's go Pat Freiermuth plus 470 for an anytime touchdown. I got like around 4-1, maybe plus 410 as fair odds.
All right, very good. And that is an appealing number. Like you said, 330 was that range last year, and now Freiermuth healthy. George Pickens just seemed he can't get going. I know he had a couple catches early in the game last week, but outside of Deontay Johnson, and I know they're getting more and more involved in the passing game too, the short passing game. All right, I like it. And listen, Nick, if it hits, it helps. It doesn't matter about the record. Okay, we're getting the good odds, and you're pricing this at fair value. Anthony DeBundo is turning to Christmas Eve night. He's going to stay up, wait for Santa to come down the chimney, watching the Patriots and the Broncos. DeBundo, you going to put yourself through this? What do you got?
I actually think the NORAD Santa tracker would be more exciting in this game. Seeing where Santa Claus is. But I mean, look, everybody's talked about, just from a narrative perspective, right? Denver is, so improved and they have a chance at the playoffs. New England's having like this worst season of all time. They're going to fire Belichick, burn it all down. I'm sure you feel that way, Brendan. Coming into the week in DVOA, Denver is 22nd. New England is 27th. Now think about that, like just how small the gap is really between these two teams. And the Patriots defense is still number 1 in the NFL in EPA per rush allowed. And I expect Denver to have no success early down running the ball to set up their play action on later downs. Denver off the script after the scripted portion of the game, really poor, still a bottom 8 offense by EPA after the first quarter. And if you look at yards per drive, because we talked about Denver a lot on this show and the Broncos and how much they had this incredible turnover luck. Defensively, like a quarter of the opponent's drives were ending with turnovers, and that was giving them all these short fields. If you just look at yards per drive, Denver is 27th on defense. They're 23rd on offense. And New England's offense is not going to be able to move the ball much here either. They have some O-line injuries. Hunter Henry may be out. Ramondre Stevenson as well. Like it's a really rough unit that New England's thrown out there offensively, but they're still a top 10 offense in yards per drive allowed. So this New England defense keeps them in this game. And I think from a net success rate, net drive percentage, Denver doesn't really have a huge edge here. So why are they laying 6.5 on a total that's crashing? Weather might be bad. There's potential for some snow. Total's at 34.5. I think it might go even lower. I like New England 6.5. You could still wait. I haven't actually bet the Patriots yet because I'm hoping and praying a 7 pops. I don't know that it will though. It seems closer to 6 than 7, but New England plus 6.5 official play here for me, and I will bet it come Saturday if the line hasn't hit 7 yet. So waiting and seeing, but I know Zappy's been so bad, and it's not fun as a bet. But like it's kind of like when Pittsburgh and their awful offense was laying, almost a full touchdown on a really low total. Well, now it's like Zappy has one good scripted drive, and all of a sudden you're feeling great about your bet. So.
And he had a handful of those, and I know Nick Giffen, he taught me the hard way about why that was a luck over and why the over was the right side when Bailey Zappi lit it up in the first half, and the over did get there in the first half.
Yeah, I love this bet. So I'm with DeBundo. first of all, just the road dog low total trend hits at such a high rate. And this is a total right now of 34.5. And we're getting 6.5 here with New England. I mean, that's insane. But if we look at Pythagorean win expectation, right? So just based off their point differential,
Yep.
Denver should be about a 40% win team, and New England should be about a 22% win team. But that doesn't take into account expected score, which of course is what drives our luck rankings. And expected score is something we call second order Pythagorean win percentage. That actually is more predictive than first order. In second order, these teams are a lot closer. And then third order is when you schedule adjust that. And schedule adjusted Pythagorean win percentage, expected Pythagorean win percentage here, these teams are pretty close. Denver's at like 38%, and New England's at like 32%. So I love this spot. I think this is a spot where we absolutely have to take New England plus 6.5.
But this does not qualify as a luck over, right? This would not fit the criteria.
Not a luck over, not a luck rankings matchup, but New England is the unluckier of the two teams in this game. It was really close to being a luck matchup, actually. It's a luck difference of 23.
Okay.
Again, with New England being, and we'd say 24 and above is significant. We also say 30% luck gap or more is significant this time of year. It's 23.6%, so not quite there. But this is like so close to being a luck over. But then you add on all those other factors. I like New England as well.
It may not be a luck over, but it may be a snover.
That's true.
The term that Stuckey has coined.
Yes.
There is the chance of snowfall.
See, that's a Stuckey term I can get on board with.
Yeah, I love snovers. So this total may crash closer to game time if you see snow, because people assume that helps defense, but it actually helps offense. Being less reactive. It's not going to be windy. Snowfall around 1 inch, according to the report. Now I haven't dove deep into it because I didn't bet the total in the game. But if it gets down to like 32, like 31, then I would bet the over. But I don't know that it'll get that low.
No fear of snow when you have two dome teams facing each other, Vikings and Lions. Grant Neefer has two angles on these games. Why don't you go back to back, Grant? What do you got?
All right, so the first one is Nick Mullins over 259.5 passing yards. I know that seems like a high number for a guy that probably is not a true NFL starter caliber quarterback, but I mean, just put up 300 last week. They're playing in a dome, which is a really big thing here. Mullins, his receiving core is potentially the best in the league. I mean, Addison, Jefferson, Hawkinson, he has just fantastic receivers. They're still going to pass a decent amount. The game script is pretty solid with them being a 3-point underdog. That was higher would be better, but they're still going to throw the ball a lot. Detroit, their pass defense is worse than their rush defense, and their pass defense might be a little overrated. They've been worse in recent weeks. I think they've given up, 28 plus points in 5 out of the last 6 weeks. They're ranked 14th in most passing yards allowed per game on the season. And they faced 2 top 12 passing offenses while they faced 7 bottom 12 pass offenses. And that includes some of the worst of the worst, like Carolina, Atlanta. Like, they've had a very easy schedule when it comes to pass offenses. Playing in a dome, they're giving up more points in a dome since the beginning of last season. Last season, I think they were top in the league in giving up points in a dome. This season, it's a little bit different, but that's because of the difference in matchups. It's been drastically easier at home facing teams like Atlanta, Carolina, Las Vegas, Green Bay, Denver. Like, they've had a very easy schedule at home this season, so the numbers are a little bit more skewed, but it's basically entirely justified based on the matchups. But Nick Mullins, great receiving core, solid game script here, actually a solid above average matchup. And everything kind of just points towards the over there, and which is why I like the over on this game. But my other pick is actually going to be Detroit over 24.5 points. They've hit this at a massive clip. I think 7 out of the last 8 games, 6 out of the last 7 games. Last season, they averaged 33 points at home, and it was slightly lower in dome games because earlier on this season, they weren't quite the same team. They faced Dallas over in Dallas, and I think they only put up 6 points. And they had one other matchup where they weren't great. But this season, in a dome, averaging over 30 points per game by a decent amount. Their 2 road dome games were against New Orleans, put up 33 points, and against the Chargers, put up 41 points. Jared Goff, last 3 seasons, has been averaging about 25 to 30 more passing yards per game in a dome They are the best home team at scoring over the last 2 seasons. And when you factor in all domes, they're still the best scoring team. They've just been absolutely unreal good in domes at putting up points, and they still allow a bunch of points. We've seen so many 50, 60, 70 point games with Detroit playing in a dome. I think this is going to be a just complete shootout here. I think the over hits. I think the Detroit over hits. I like that one a little bit better, especially if you can get it at 24.5. Everything points towards an over here.
Okay, very good. Total right now 46.5 for Detroit and Minnesota. We'll turn our attention now. The final 2 picks feature the game of the weekend. I think most would agree. Christmas night, Baltimore visiting San Francisco, the 2 favorites in their respective conferences. Nick Giffen playing a side. What do you have?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Baltimore plus 5.5 here against the San Francisco 49ers. I know it scares a lot of people to go against this 49ers team right now that is just absolutely crushing. But Baltimore, almost just as good. If we look again, I mentioned Pythagorean expectations, second order, third order, all that mathy stuff. You don't need to know all the mathy stuff, but the mathy stuff says that these 2 teams are pretty close in third order Pythagorean expected win percentage. Again, we're schedule adjusting, looking at expected scores instead of actual scores, but even just actual scores, right? In terms of differential, yeah, San Francisco has a higher differential in terms of points for minus points against, but they also play in overall higher scoring games. So that matters more, or that matters, which is why they have a higher differential. So essentially these 2 teams, if you adjust for the scoring volume in the game, have pretty much similar expectation there. Now, yes, San Francisco did play 3 of those games without Trent Williams, no Deebo Samuel at certain points. So you have to adjust for that. But in aggregate, San Francisco's, probably 1.5, 2 points better, even 3 points better, but then maybe 1.5 for home field. I cannot get to 5.5 here overall for San Francisco. I think, 4 is kind of a key number here. So I would take anything 4.5 or longer on the Baltimore Ravens here. I mean, this is a team that, yeah, they've gone through a few different running backs. It sucks that they've had a ton of injuries there, but overall, what matters most is your quarterback and your defense. And this is a team that is very strong at both positions here. I think they'll be able to limit. Brock Purdy has had an amazing season, but I think they'll be able to limit Brock Purdy a little bit. And their offense is high-powered enough that they'll be able to score points and keep it close here with San Francisco. So I think anything 4.5 or longer, I would take it and run with the Ravens here.
Tabundo, you know this. Running backs don't really matter unless you're Christian McCaffrey or you're one of those handful of dudes. But you have an angle here too, Tabundo, to take us home.
Yeah, I like over 46.5. I think the Jaguars offense really did move the ball better than even I thought. And I bet the over last Sunday, right? I talked about it. I said the weather won't be that bad. The total's too low. Game, of course, went under. But Jacksonville had 5 trips past the 40 that led to 0 points, 2 missed field goals,
End of the
fumble
first
in
half.
the red zone. End of the first half, that touchdown to Ridley, which I thought he clearly caught, and apparently Terry McAulay did too, but the officials did not. They had 5.5 yards of play, and that's a very one-dimensional Jaguars offense with Trevor Lawrence, who got concussed mid-game, playing on a bad ankle with 1 good receiver. This San Francisco offense, I think, is going to move the ball very well against an overrated Baltimore secondary. Look at what we've seen San Francisco do to what we thought were good defenses this season, completely shredding them, with the lone exception of Cleveland. They have moved the ball up and down the field on teams like Dallas and even Philly. Obviously we know they're not that good anymore, but this San Francisco offense has scored 27 points in every game where everybody's been healthy all season. And dating back to last season, same thing is true. Since Purdy took over, I know they have some offensive line issues, but look, he's such a good processor. He makes up for it. And regardless of what you think of his MVP candidacy, this offense is operating at an elite level, and it's going to force Baltimore to play a little faster than they want to, right? Baltimore's played with a lot of leads this year. They've played very slow as a result of that. They're going to have to play a little bit faster, and I do think they'll have success running the ball. I mean, San Francisco gave up 7.8 yards per rush to Arizona last week. You can run on this Niner front, and I think that the Ravens will find success on the ground. Lamar will do his thing, get a couple explosives. Stanley looks like he's going to play. So I love this over at 46.5. And I just really think that the market is overvaluing this Ravens defense and this Niners defense. I took Arizona with the points last week, didn't get home on that either, but like they were moving the ball up and down the field at will. It's just that I think San Francisco's offense will finish off the drives that Jacksonville could not last week. So over 46.5 for me.
Right. And the Cardinals, too. They kicked a bunch of field goals in that game against San Francisco. Just couldn't quite get to the sticks. Alrighty. In place of Brandon Anderson's look ahead, DeBundo, speaking of those Arizona Cardinals, and he threw a little dig in there on the Eagles. He mixed that in there, DeBundo, very quietly. I caught that. You're going to take Brandon's slot this week and give us a look ahead for week number 17.
Yeah, so the Eagles play against Tommy DeVito and the Giants on Christmas Day in the afternoon. They are 12-point favorites. I do expect them to win that game. It will be very interesting to see how much they win it by, because they should win with margin. This is like the classic get right spot at home against an overmatched quarterback. Right the ship. Ben Solak wrote a really good piece about the Eagles offense that's up right now at the Ringer. And it kind of gets into the things that I've been seeing and the concerns that I've had, which is that they're just not as explosive. They're not as good in the running game this year. Hurts as a runner has been a problem, and they have not been as explosive. And I think that's going to be a problem for them to get margin against a competent and very effective, really, offense in Arizona next week. Arizona comes to the length. They're catching 10. I like Arizona plus 10 on the look ahead. I think this offense, since Kyler has come back, has shown a lot of life. 5.5 yards per play against the Texans in a loss. I just talked about 7.8 yards per rush against San Francisco. And the Eagles' run defense has very quietly tapered off. San Francisco had a ton of success running on them. Dallas got what they wanted on the ground. And even last week, Seattle on Monday night, Ken Walker was really effective. So this run defense, this defensive line has not been as good. So I think Arizona gets enough points up on the board to overcome their defensive flaws. And like I said, the Eagles are just not explosive. They have not been good with leads, putting teams away like they were last year. They've only had 2 wins by double digits all year. Miami, Tampa Bay. They've won a lot of close games, even in games against overmatched teams like New England or Washington both times. So I just don't really trust them to get margin. So give me Arizona plus 10.
I would add, too, Matt Patricia against the mobile quarterback. Well, first of all, he wasn't great against Drew Lock, but dating back to his time with the Patriots, the rocket scientist that became Bill Belichick's defensive coordinator, Bill Patricia constantly struggle against the mobile quarterback. And you let Drew Lock roll out and make throws on the run. What's Kyler Murray going to do? So I would agree, getting double digits against Philadelphia. All right, gents, thanks for being here. Thanks for making it happen. We keep this show rolling week by week. That is going to do it here on the Action Network podcast for our NFL Week 16 Best Bets episode. We are presented by our friends at BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Again, don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app to see all of these guys' picks, our other contributors at Action Network for the NFL slate. A lot going on, 4 days of games. Be sure to keep an eye. Check out the Action Network Discord. As I said, they're on YouTube. Subscribe, like the video. We appreciate you. We'll be back next Thursday for our record. Podcast will be out first thing on Friday morning. Best of luck this weekend. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy your holiday. For DeBundo, Nick Giffen, Grant Neefer, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for listening to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. We'll see you next week.